Hello, and thanks for tuning in to my Pro Tools tutorials. My name is Anthony Zeller. I am the owner of Sound Optic Audio Post-Production, a small company working on independent films for the audio post world here in Los Angeles. I have 11 years of experience with Pro Tools at this point, and I just wanted to share some of it with you. So I plan to have many of these to come, so stay tuned. The very first one, we're going to start with the very basics. If you just bought Pro Tools HD or Pro Tools LE or the new Pro Tools 9, I'm actually not using 9, I'm using 801, but the principles I'm going to discuss here are going to be exactly the same regardless of which version of Pro Tools you have. I'm using Macintosh Dual G5 2.7, the last of the PCI X architectured PowerPCs. And this is Pro Tools HD version 801, which is the last version of software that DigiDesign, which evidently they're dropping the name DigiDesign, now they're just going to be Avid, but whatever, that DigiDesign created that's going to be functional on the PowerPC. So first off, you'll want to find the Pro Tools HD icon in your dock, or if it is not in your dock, it is after installation, of course, in your applications folder. In my case, DigiDesign, but if you're running Pro Tools 9, this folder will probably just be called Pro Tools. And within the Pro Tools folder is the application itself, Pro Tools HD. But I believe it automatically puts it in your dock. It's been a while since I installed it. But after you have launched Pro Tools, you'll want to create a new session. A session is more or less just a roadmap of all of your audio and video clips if you have them, MIDI files, anything else used for the audio creation of your song or post-production project. But we'll want to create a new session. It's Apple N, or under File, New Session. Here you'll get a dialog box when you get a new session, here in Pro Tools 8 anyway, where it will see if you want to create a session from a template, which there are several that they come up with for various music production, music-related production things. You can also create your own, which I'll get into in another tutorial. I'm not sure if they cover how to do that in the manual. I just kind of stumbled upon it, but for our purposes, I'm going to create a blank session. The settings I'll let you figure out on your own. I know what I want to use here. Broadcast wave is the most universal. Most audio post facilities are still running at 48K. In my case, I'm just going to do 24-bit, and I have a previously saved I/O setup. We'll get into that another time, but you can use any of the ones created for you from DigiDesign, or if you have used Pro Tools slightly in the past, then you'll know that there are customizable setups that you can use. But I'm just going to use one of my 5.1 sessions for I/O. So the first thing you want to do is save a session. It's going to prompt you to do so immediately. I'm going to call this one just test, I guess 3, because I've got a couple in there already. Keep in mind that any new recordings or new MIDI files or anything will always stay with the session to the location that you're saving to right now. So for instance, I'm inside a folder on my 1 terabyte storage drive called tests. This is test 3 particularly. So now any audio file that I create or import, or any MIDI file that I create or import, will automatically, assuming I copy it, be copied to that location on the drive. You can also check this if you hold down the Apple or the Command key, whatever, the Apple key, and click on the title up here. It'll actually show you the hierarchy of where things are. So if I back up 1 step here to test 3, the Finder will open up, and these are all the folders that Pro Tools has created for me automatically. And audio files, fade files, region, and video. All of these are empty at the moment, of course, because I haven't done anything, but it does create them. And there's a WFM, a waveform file, which I'll get into the purpose of that another time. It's not terribly important, just leave it there. So here we are. Our first step in our Pro Tools tutorial is to after creating a new session, is to show you that probably the second most important window here is the session setup window, which if you hold down the Apple key and hit 2 on the numeric keypad, the session setup window will appear. It's also under setup, go figure. Session setup window. Here it is. At any rate, it will show you some pertinent information, and if you're working with resolving to video or anything of that nature, then your frame rate is going to be very important. This window will show you some redundant information, such as your sample rate and bit rate. It will show you your file format. It will show you the beginning of your timeline. That is this portion of the Pro Tools timeline, where it will start in relation to timecode. This is very important for post-production. I don't know what the default is. This is probably based on a previous session I created, but it will start at 0. Most post-production timelines will begin at hour 1, but the timeline's 0 through 24 hours, so leaving it at 0 is not a big deal. This is probably the most important part right here, is frame rate. I'm going to stick with 2398 because I do a lot of high definition video, and that's the standard for that. But you can also, if you're working in film, be it 24. EBU standard for Europe is 25. Generally speaking, in America, if you're working with standard def television, it'll be 2997 drop. But I'm going to stay at 2398, 23976 in this case. I don't have any peripheral set up for sync. I don't have a sync box attached to this particular rig, so this window is kind of not so important at the moment. But if you had a sync box or another peripheral that was capturing timecode, these boxes would be much more important. For our purposes, just make sure that your pull-up and pull-down rates are at 0. We're not going to work in that at all. I'll get into that in another tutorial as well. But just be sure that your timeline here is set to 2398. Timecode 2, you can set a second timeline if you wish. That'll just show up here in the bar. It's not relevant to how Pro Tools will act if it's chasing code or anything, but it's just nice to have a second ruler up there if you need it. So that is the session setup window. The two main windows within Pro Tools are the edit window, which is the one you see in front of you now, and if you hit Apple equals or plus or equals, as the case may be, you can switch to what would be the mix window. Obviously you don't see anything in here at the moment, but as soon as we create a track, which is the next part of our lesson, if you hit Shift Apple N, or under track, new, it will give you several options. First and foremost, the quantity. I'm just going to stick with one. What type of track? In my case, I'm using Pro Tools HD, so I have everything between a mono track and a 7.1 track that I can create. And that can be an audio track, an auxiliary track, a master fader, and so on. And it's going to show you how it's going to count it either in ticks or samples. I'm not going to get into that right now, but let's just leave it at samples. So for the case of, for the sake of this tutorial, I'm just going to make a stereo audio track. And there it is. Now it's appeared in my edit window. There are some defaults left over from the last time I opened the session. If you'll see, there's a little box here in Pro Tools 8 where you can choose the things you want to see within this edit window. It's showing comments, I/O, and track color at the moment. If I wanted to get rid of any of these, just uncheck them, and you'll see that they will disappear. If I don't care to see I/O in this window, I can get rid of that as well. And if you now switch to the edit window, the mix window, Apple equals, you will see that there is a fader here now with inserts and sends and an input setting. At this point, an output setting. I'll get into the particulars of that. The automation mode at the moment is just in read. I don't have any automation written anyway. You have two pan knobs for both the left and the right channel. You can either have them discretely left or right. The I here is for channel input. It will now play through any input that's coming into this input and out of this output. There's a solo button, a mute button, and a record, which works in conjunction with input, either always being an input or being an auto input. If it's unchecked, it's an auto input. You'll see that when I'm in record, the fader turns red, obviously. The fader is, of course, a volume control, and underneath here you have, it'll show you what volume, relative volume you're at the moment. There is a place to name a track. If you double click on it, you can rename the track, and this will show you any delay compensation in samples that is going on, and we'll get into that another time as well. The last thing I want to look at in this particular tutorial is the tools and the modes. At the moment, I'm in slip mode, and slip mode is very useful for if you have a piece of audio. Let's just call this test just for fun. If you rename the session before you hit record, the audio files will bear the same name. So at the moment I'm recording silence. I don't have anything patched into my 1 and 2 inputs, but you will see that the audio file is recording just as well. Stereo, left and right here. If I hit stop, you'll see that it says test 01. Pro Tools defaults to naming audio files with an underscore and starting with 01, 02, 03, and so on. But now I have my first audio file, and in slip mode, you will see that as it says, if I use the hand tool, which is just the grabber, you can slip an audio file in time, one direction or another. If you are in grid mode, then you may see that there are grids behind here. In my case, gridding to frames, but you can set the grid anywhere from subframes to seconds. Or if you're working in music and you have bars and beats, you can switch the timeline completely, and it will go to bars and beats in either quarter notes, 16ths, 64ths. So as you see, you can change your timeline up to suit your purposes no matter what. I'm going to stay in time code for obvious reasons, but moving things using the hand tool, of course, in grid mode makes them snap to, as you might guess, each frame, because that's what I'm gridding to. Spot mode is, if you click on an audio file, you'll get a dialog box asking you where you would like to spot things to. And this also is relative to your meter, whether you're in bars and beats, minutes or seconds, time code, and so on. So I could change this if I wanted to be 0. And it would snap to the head of my session here at 0. And lastly is shuffle mode, which I'll create a second audio file here. Oops, nothing's record enabled. Create a second audio file here just for test purposes. Shuffle mode allows you to adhere one audio file to the end of the previous audio file, or to the beginning of the next audio file if you happen to have one. So in this case, shuffle, if I grab this and slide it toward the previous audio file, you'll see it lights up red, and it will magnetically adhere itself there. The tools are fairly self-explanatory. There's a spyglass, which is used for zooming in. If you highlight over an area, then it will zoom in. If you option highlight over an area, it will zoom out. There's also a single zoom. Most of these tools have multi-functions underneath. I'll let you get into those on your own time. This is the trim tool. Trim allows you to, assuming there's audio to be found, which at the moment there is not, but if I overlap these two audio files, you'll see that when I grab the trim tool, now I'll be able to trim the previous one over the next until the end of the recording, and vice versa. The end or the beginning of the second audio file, anywhere in between. We'll get into this more when I actually show you examples of audio files in editing. This is a selector tool. This is probably the most used one. It's literally just for dropping into the timeline for any old purpose, whether it be to highlight, delete, or whether it be just to, if you had a video track in here and you wanted to queue up to a certain spot, you could just click anywhere in the timeline. The hand tool, which you've seen, allows you to, in my case, slip, grid, spot, or shuffle audio within a track. There's also an audition. I call it well, it's called a scrub tool, but if there was something to be heard there, you could scrub over it, much like you would scrub the flanges of a tape machine. So thank you for watching, and please stay tuned for our next installment of Pro Tools tutorials here on SoundOptic.com. Thanks for watching.